The Declaration of Independence says something that you don't really find in the ancient world. It says, all men are created equal. And yet they are so obviously different, aren't they? In America, we like sports. And in sports, they keep score. And you find out who's equal and who's not. And you find it out relentlessly. What does equality mean then? In what way or respect is it true that all men are created equal? What does it mean equal? What does it mean all men are created equal when, obviously, by the way, they are not? Like, look around the table. I'm old, you're young, boys and girls, large and small, younger and older. You're just a baby, aren't you?
Yes.
He's a sophomore. He's a precocious sophomore, as old Christian here. So we're not equal, right? What does it mean all men are created equal? What do they mean?
They have equal dignity as human beings, even though they might be endowed with different degrees.
So Hitler and Churchill, for example, have equal dignity.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder, what does dignity mean?
It references the nature of man as having a right to exist in some respect, at least insofar as being in like the body that you are.
Mm. Okay. Compare children and dogs. The most important comparison, by the way, in the entire academic world, the key to understanding all nature, is to compare children and dogs. I don't like cats. I don't compare them. But children and dogs, right? And what is it about the children and the dogs?
You can raise them just about the same way when they're young, but then at some point the children start speaking and somehow they've picked up on how people act and how people interact.
They talk. Yeah, the specific thing they do. See, in my family, the children are grown now, and we have these two boxers, and they're really great. One of them's a three-legged dog, and he's the happiest dog we ever had. And the dogs are everywhere, wherever we are. So you guys are all coming over to my house for dinner, and you will find that you'll be dining with the dogs, right? And when we were raising the kids, the dogs were always there. And after about a year and a half, the kids started talking, and the dogs never did. And they'd all heard exactly the same things, right? So this talking, Aristotle says that the gift of speech, which is identical, he claims, to reason or rationality, they are the same thing. The argument is, when you are talking, you are thinking to yourself. You are thinking out loud. And when you are thinking, you are talking to yourself. It's the same thing. Now, somehow this capacity we have that makes us human, there's some respect in which we are all created equal. And where I think that is this phenomenon of the dogs and the kids. Dogs, at various times in their lives, are greatly preferable to children, right? But they're not the same kind of thing. Else they would say so. And they never do, right? Last night, the dogs were talking to us as dogs talk, right? And Aristotle says, animals use their voices to indicate pleasure and pain. People speak to distinguish the just from the unjust, right? This whole thing is a statement of the just and the unjust, and it depends on this simple point. This is what all men are created equal means. You are the King of England, and you ride in a golden carriage, and everybody salutes you and all fear you. But you know, when you were a year and a half old, you started doing something that no animal has ever done. And no one taught you to do that. You just started doing it. And it wasn't because you were born royal, it's because you were born human, and so were we. It just means that. And think what that allows. Our kids like to say cow. They have an English mother. They English say that word very well. But it's just a sound, right? Cow, cow, cow. Why not plop, flack, whack? You know, why not a million things? Or cow, cow. What's that got to do with that thing out in the field, everyone different from everyone else? Right? And they can just look at a two-dimensional picture of a cow and identify it, and then you can take it out in the field and show them a bunch of animals, and they'll point out which one's the cow. But that means before they're old enough to even go outside by themselves, their whole universe gets populated by all of the things that it's in ours. Planets, stars, worms, bees, everything. They can get all of that, right? And they can get all that by the time they're 3 years old. And then by the time they're 5 years old, for sure, they can start identifying these sounds they make with marks on a page, and then they're reading. And then the next thing you know, they're reading Shakespeare. And then they can do numbers, because numbers are just the same kind of symbols except for quantities. And once you can do the basic math, you're on your way to quantum mechanics. Every human being can do that, every single one. And no other creature has ever done that. And born in this gift, you see, that we can speak and therefore see that thing and that thing is the same kind of thing, and it doesn't make any difference if it's your kid or somebody else's. You can't treat it like a dog because it is not a dog. And no king can treat it like a dog because it is not a dog to him either, because it's not a dog. See, once the ground is laid for that, then, of course, Thomas Jefferson can write in the last serious letter he wrote, "Some are not born with saddles on their backs, nor others booted and spurred to ride them by the grace of God." The king can rightly put a harness on the horses that pull his carriage, but he can't do that to people unless they volunteer. You see, that's a tremendous philosophic proposition and the ultimate source of human freedom. And this, by the way, is the greatest political statement of that in all history.